Flo, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I am just so ready to dive in, but so people know who you are, gosh, what your zone of genius is, and like truly the bright light that you are. Can you just introduce yourself real quick and then we'll get started?
Yes, my name is Florencia Moynihan. I'm the founder of the Catholic Nutritionist. I'm a functional nutritionist and fem instructor. We are a functional nutrition practice for women that are looking to restore not just their body, but their relationship with food. So we do a lot of foundational work. We help women with all kinds of conditions, but ultimately it's about freedom of the mind, body, and soul. Do we also
Amen.
sign in with what our autoimmune condition is on this show or what?
You can because you're in good company.
And I've been diagnosed with Hashimoto's. I feel like it's like the like Miss USA, and they're like, or no, the Miss Universe, and they're like Albania. I'm just like Hashimoto's.
This is just so on brand for you. Like when you're talking about like fighting, right? But you make things so light and joyful and hopeful. And so it's like Hashimoto's is not funny at all. And like this is just the type of person you are. I just love you so much. And I cannot wait to dive into what we have for today because it is so good. It's so juicy. It is so life-giving. And the fact that you have Hashimoto's, you have this real personal experience when it comes to the things that we're going to be talking about today. And I cannot wait to dive in. So, with that being said, let's dive into something that we both experienced in like different facets of our just journey when it comes to being a functional nutritionist, being entrepreneurs, being founders of online virtual practices, right? There is a hustle culture that is alive and well in the entrepreneurial space. And it's not just in the entrepreneurial space, it is in corporate America. It is woven in the American culture. And so when we're talking about really setting ourselves up for success when it comes to this more gentle foundational approach to healing, one of the things that you love to talk about and proclaim is how we're actually called to rest biblically. A lot of people practice the Sabbath. Let's go back to the basics. And can you just explain to me and share with me your heart when it comes to not only rest being productive, but the call to rest when it comes to the Sabbath?
You know what's funny is that the whole rest is productive isn't exactly why the Lord tells us to rest, but I feel like that's the overachiever's reasoning for why it's okay to rest.
Ooh, tell me more.
Like, because when you think about it, it's like the Lord rested, so we need to rest and we need to honor the Lord's day. And it's what helps us separate like our humanity from our productivity. But even just as you were
Yes.
saying that, I was like, the fact that like we have to, honestly, it feels like we have to say that sometimes to like each other or clients or ourselves to be like, no, it's okay. Like ultimately rest is what's going to be productive. It still is the
Yes.
same root of like, I need to be productive and idolizing work or our busyness or kind of like not loving the fact that we're called to rest because we're called to like honor God in that way. Do you know what I'm saying? That it's like
I
we're like
hear,
comforting ourselves by being like, well, it's still going to be
yes.
productive when it's like, what if like we literally removed that word from the situation? Now let's talk about rest, you know?
100%. And gosh, I this is so good because I think that when we're talking about our inherent value, our value doesn't come from our productivity.
Right.
I find this a lot when it comes to talking with clients, specifically with autoimmune disease. When your body is tired, it is okay to rest. It is okay to like not do all the productive things for your health. Instead, you can prioritize rest. I will be completely honest. I frame it in this like, hey, it's productive, but it's almost like, hey, rest is like worthy. You're a human, you're not a machine.
Yeah. I think when productivity becomes the bar, we will always fall short and rest will always come with guilt. But when
Yes.
like living well, and if maybe like if you're Christian, like living a holy life that
Uh-huh.
is in Jesus's sacred heart, then the rest is like part of understanding how he made you, and it's foundational to relationship with him.
Yeah.
But if
It
it's
is.
just about like productivity and like how much am I putting, which is like literally, you started by saying like,
Ooh,
what?
you just said something that resonated, but I
Go,
can.
because I'm about to change gears. Go.
Oh, okay, sweet. In this season in particular, with being pregnant, a lot of my identity is in things that are productive. So the fact that I haven't been able to like do the dishes or clean my house across the board, especially in my first trimester, I was not able to be productive. And so I really had to lean when I was doing my prayer time into what does a relationship, a healthy relationship with God look like? And I really dove into the element of intimacy with
Mm,
God. And it's just being present with Him. And so it just is such a reminder when it comes to our heart posture with productivity is that, like, when we're talking about trying to light up your soul, there is this element of like intimacy with prayer, and it's just being there and being still. And that stillness actually comes from like an inside out. It's not always physically still, it's emotionally and spiritually still and being okay in that stillness.
yeah. It's about being little. Like you've never seen a
Yes.
child be like, well, mom, these are all the things that I got done today, and this is all that I have to get doing, and I gotta go, 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 go. Like that is so
Uh,
bizarre. They just like know how to be. But then we get older and then we get wounded, and then we start to think that our worth comes from the things that we accomplish or how we make people feel, or we start to feel less than others. So we start to overcompensate, and it just goes over and over and over. But like, really,
yeah,
part of rest is like learning to be childlike again. There ain't no baby sleeping in their mom's arms that's like, "Ugh, I should be off doing other things." Like,
literally.
I should be doing tummy time right now. Like it really
Yes.
is that posture of heart of like a little child sleeping in their mother or father's arms.
Absolutely. And there's so many things that come to mind right now, like surrender and peace. But all of that really starts with being okay in stillness. And when I'm talking to clients, when it comes to rest, it's like oftentimes there is so much shame and guilt, especially if you are a high achieving woman, if you're a mother, and we're talking about prioritizing rest. It's like Sunday mornings are Sunday mornings, or Sunday evenings are Sunday evenings, and this is where my Sabbath starts.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious, where is a really good place to start? So this is something that I usually recommend, but I'm curious on your thoughts on that, kind of starting small and then building from there so that there is more of this peace when it comes to not only practicing the Sabbath, but rest in general.
Okay, so good. I have a story. So, I think the best place to start is we need to start with an honest awareness and a little assessment. This is like
Uh-huh.
what you do with your clients. I do it with mine too. Before we're going to do any work, we need to do an assessment of where you're at and how your body is feeling and where your body is telling us. So,
Yeah.
first, just like assess what your body is telling you. One of the best ways to do this is when you sit still, maybe if you are someone that prays or if you like just try to do breath work or whatever it may be,
Uh-huh.
um, how long does it take, or how much of the time from the start is your brain just going, 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 going?
Yeah.
Another scenario where that will happen is at a massage. How long does it take you to stop your brain and to just like breathe and feel the massage? And then the
Yeah.
third one is at meals. So I was on a retreat the other day. I was on a retreat last month with
Uh-huh.
one of my dearest friends, and it was a silent retreat. So you don't talk. But they obviously still have the meals in the dining hall. So we would
Uh-huh.
still sit at the same table because we would sit across from each other because I was like, I'd rather like look towards her than like keep accidentally staring at a stranger. And you just like go in, you serve yourself your meal kind of buffet style. You sit on the table, you eat, and then when you're done, you just get up and you can move on to the next thing. Like there's no starting and stopping because it's silent. And then we all had a schedule of where we were supposed to be.
Uh-huh.
By night two, she goes, we had like decided that we were like, okay, we've had enough silence. Like we can talk now because we were sharing a room.
Uh-huh.
And she was like, what is going on? Like, why are you finishing your meal so fast? It was embarrassing. She was like, you are finishing like 20 minutes before everyone else. And I was like, I don't even realize. And I like literally, I teach all my clients to slow down at mealtime, but I
Uh-huh.
felt like I was going so slow But I still was like, "Oh, gotta keep going." And I like would go to the next thing because I like really wanted to go back to my room and read my book, or I wanted to like pop into the
Yeah.
chapel. And it was this weird thing where it didn't even feel wrong. And it
Mm-hmm.
didn't feel like I was like shoveling down my meal. And obviously, you're not
Yeah.
talking. It's quiet. Like they just have some classical music on in the background. And I was like, I was chewing my food and I felt like I ate a whole meal and I felt
Mm-hmm.
like I was being slow, but her reflecting it back to me and she was like, girl, no. And so then I was like, okay, bet. The
Yeah.
next meal, I sat across from her again and I was like, I'm gonna go bite for bite. Like, I'm gonna match her pace. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, this is so slow. She was eating like really slow. She was having a good time that day. And it was just so slow that I was just like, wow, like where do I think I need to go be? And that's like I think something just this month, honestly, that I've like really picked up on myself. Part of it is maybe having more energy. Part of it is I have some stressors. Part of it is I'm like excited about certain things. And part of it is just lack of being attuned to that piece of my heart. So when we talk about rest, I'm glad that you brought up motherhood too, because it's not, when we're talking about rest, we're not saying that you are going to have hours in your calendar where you are free to do whatever you want and lounge around.
Yes.
Rest is like really one, there is an intention, there is an aspect of time to it, which is why the Lord is like, hey, protect the Lord's day, protect your Sabbath.
Yeah.
But it is also like a disposition of heart, a restful heart, versus what I'm trying to paint this picture of. I was like, go, 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 going through the first 2 days of this retreat, which is literally the opposite of what it's supposed to be. And I didn't even notice that my heart was like operating at a speed that was like, it came across to her as a little frantic. Like she
Mm-hmm.
was like, this is like not pleasant to watch, which is a really important thing to be reflected back to you because it felt fine to me. But it
Yeah.
wasn't until I looked around and I was like, wow, I like looked at my clock and I saw, shan't even share how long that meal was. It was so embarrassing. But I looked at my clock and I was like, it makes me think of like how I used to take tests like in school. I would be like
Yes.
the first one done because I was like, I already know if I don't know it, so I'm just going to submit my test and like walk out after 7 minutes, whatever it may
Yeah.
be. So I think as
Seven
someone who,
minutes,
which then
girl.
there's like the signs that I was going to end up with an autoimmune disease. They've been there for a long time. There be some stories and some history there, but yeah, it's something like you have to pick up. As someone identifies as high achieving, instantly that makes me be like, why is that like an identity piece for you?
Hmm.
And it doesn't
And
surprise me if you're high achieving and have an autoimmune disorder.
it's so common. And that's one of something that you mentioned that is, gosh, such a good start point
Yeah.
is how we approach our meals. And because it's so true, when we are used to this hustle culture and we find normalcy in it, and it's like, oh, this is just the way I have to live my life. This it will convince you that like there's no other options when there are, right? And it's sometimes it takes someone to be like, hey, what's going on here? You're speeding through your meal. And then through that lens change, you'd be like, wait, hold on a second,
Yeah.
hold up, this is actually something that I want to test out a little bit more. And I love that you use this example. One, because it's such a normal thing. Like when we're talking about eating while in the car or working through lunchtime or as a mom, right? If you're feeding your toddler, usually your toddler is eating off of your plate. You're prioritizing someone else's nourishment over yours, which is totally okay. And there's a way to do both. And there's a way to essentially have this restful heart, starting even with mealtime. And if we're doing a whole day of Sabbath, right, it doesn't mean that you're sitting on the couch like being a potato and you're like, oh, it's a Sabbath, like I can't move. It's more of a life giving day. And so it's like if doing laundry is not life giving for you, that's okay. Maybe that day you go to the park or go on a walk or whatever it looks like for you. That's the beautiful part of the Sabbath is that it's really it's a boundary within yourself, but it also allows you to assess kind of what you mentioned before, assessing, hey, what actually does give me life and how can I utilize that to honor the Lord and honor God in this restful state. And again, if you're a Christian and the process of getting closer to God is something that's high priority, The cool thing is that there's so much science supported research that also it like regulates our nervous system,
Yeah.
that there's so much depth into this. And so our focus right now is obviously like getting close to God, increasing our intimacy with our faith. But there's also a physical, quite literally a physical benefit to this as well, which is why really through nervous system regulation and our brain health is directly supported when we approach faith in a way that is truly, truly life-giving. And so this is an example of that. Now, with that being said, um, gosh, so many high achieving women are susceptible to chronic illness and autoimmune disease, and they don't even know it. And there's so many conversations right now about how trauma and how identities or different identities can almost like sneak up on us when we least expect it. And this can trigger or cause a domino effect that leads to chronic illness or autoimmune disease. And so when we're talking about the expectations of our culture, chronic stress, caregiving, whether it's our child or maybe our parents, from your perspective in particular, like why is essential for women's health? So we talked about, Sabbath, but let's kind of dive into more of like what research says and how this is really science supported and grounded. And so when we're talking about women's health physically, so hormone health, emotionally, chronic stress, and then of course spiritually, which really allows us to just have a more fulfilling life overall.
Yeah, I think the answer is even just in the way that you ask the question, that rest is essential. It is a
Yeah.
non-negotiable. Personally, used to wear it as a badge of honor, how packed my schedule was, how busy I was.
Yes.
Because I was like, this like I thought it showed my capacity. I thought it showed how hardworking it was. I thought it showed my priorities and that I was serious in my life. And instead, basically, I think a lot of women struggle to accept their humanity.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of women really struggle
Yeah.
to accept that, like, you are not a plant that can photosynthesize. Like, you need to eat.
Yeah.
You are not a rock, like, that just, like, is and just is unchanging. Like, you need to sleep 8 hours a night.
Yes.
So many of like our very human, the basic human needs to drink water, to sleep, to eat, a lot of women see as burdens, I think, on accident. And like it doesn't even,
Yeah.
they wouldn't even say it that way, but the language is like, ugh, like eating is such a chore. Like, or I
Uh,
missed lunch again. I was like in the middle of doing some work and I like totally forgot to eat today. Or like, it's so annoying that I have to sleep, or it's so annoying that I can't run off of 6 hours, or that I'm like, it's so annoying that I'm still tired when I know that I haven't been sleeping enough. All of these kinds of things, like being annoyed or frustrated as if it's a burden, when these are actually the signals that are built into you to
uh,
like make first of all, honestly, like to remind you of your dependence on God, that he sustains you, and that like you are not God. Like you are also not just like some random creature, some random creation. Like
uh,
you have been very specifically designed, and the way that we live ought to reflect that. So the signs that your body is asking for it, and
uh,
that it is not being given the rest that it needs, that evidence that like this essential piece is missing, is things like overwhelming PMS, maybe where your cramps are at a 7, 8, 9, or 10, where you break out a ton, and maybe you're like in your 20s, 30s, 40s, and you're like, I feel like I'm back in high school and this is so embarrassing. Your skin speaking to you. Eczema, psoriasis, or other ways that your skin might be saying like, hey, something we're doing isn't working. Even if in your luteal phase, I'm like Aunt Flo, the cycle girl. So like pay attention to your cycle. If you're not paying attention to your cycle, that's like one of the biggest ways that your body communicates with you. But if in that
yeah.
second half of your cycle, maybe the week or two before your period, you hate your husband, or you think
Yes.
everyone hates you, or your mood feels like such a roller coaster, like you can break down into tears or like into a burst of flames at the drop of a hat, whatever it may be. Those are some cycle clues. In terms of digestion, constant diarrhea or a lot of constipation, I feel like these are signs that your body is like stuck in fight or flight. And
Yep.
you might be one or the other, or you might be someone that like rotates between both. But like if your
Yeah.
body,
It goes back and forth.
yes, and it's like it lets everything go because it's like, we got to run, girl. Like we got to be it.
Literally.
let go of some
The
burdens.
constipation purge is real, and it will convince people that they have diarrhea when it's like, no, babes, you have constipation and your body is like, get this crap out of me, truly pun intended.
Yeah.
It's wild. And you're
And then
running,
the
sprinting to the
constipation
bathroom.
is literally like, why would your body ever want to hold on to feces? Like, why would it ever want to hold on to waste? Like, what is happening? What kind of inflammation is it happening? Is it nervous system support? Like, lack of sleep? Is there something going on with the gut that, like, the body is literally being like, we're going to hold it? It just, it doesn't make sense. Your body's on your team and it's always like working for your good. You're not
Yes.
like at war with your body. It really is working for your survival. And so if it thinks that it has to be in survival mode, of course, we're going to stop ovulating because it goes, we need to focus on like keeping her alive, not bringing a child into the world, or it's going to
Totally.
like kind of throw some of these processes out of whack because it really starts to prioritize your survival. And a lot of women are living in a way that communicates to their body that they're in survival mode and like we are on guard.
100%. And that's when we're talking about, gosh, I feel like our bodies as women are so beautifully interconnected. It's just what another perfect example of this is, like, you're talking about hormone health, you're talking about gut health, you're talking about digestive health, you're talking about, nervous system health and chronic stress. All of these things are directly connected. And so when we're talking about foundational health, like, this is actually what we're talking about. And so often we feel like, I've been experiencing this and now this is coming up. Here we go. It's like, yeah, but they're actually connected. That's really good news that your body is actually trying to communicate with you, saying, hey, there's something up. You need to approach this in a new way. And so, something that I see a lot, even in the healing space, which I think is the most ironic thing ever, is that we approach healing in a masculine, aggressive way. And it's like, we have to do X, Y, and Z, X, Y, and Z, eliminate this, do that, right? Discipline, willpower, bot. You have to be 100% every day or you don't want it, right? That approach is not nurturing. It is masculine. 80% of women I'm sorry, out of all the 50 million people in America who are either affected by autoimmune disease with a clear diagnosis or affected with autoimmune disease with an unclear diagnosis, 80% of those 50 million are women. And so if we are looking at how this population approaches life, pushing through, suffering in silence, navigating a world where they feel like they're not understood or seen or heard, this is all going into your masculine, where you're like, oh, I gotta bootstrap it through. And so when we're talking about this, when we're talking about being mindful of like how your body is and how you're feeling during your luteal phase, this is a nurturing approach. It is like how you would approach a toddler
Yeah.
that like scraped their knee. You would not approach a toddler being like, who scraped their knee and it's like bleeding. There's a valid injury. You're like, walk it off, walk it off. No, you're going to be like, oh, I see you're hurt. Let's address this in a kind and safe way. This is kind of where I feel like it comes full circle. If we are looking to feel more in alignment with our body, if you are feeling right now that your body is fighting against you, that your body hates you, and that these symptoms are just like knocking you down and punching you like a wrecking ball, it is very, very likely that you have either adapted into a very chronically stressed or masculine lifestyle. And this is probably for your survival. Your brain is really smart and it will tell you to do things for your survival. What your brain is not very good at is a software update. And so oftentimes we have survival mechanisms that are like outdated software. And if we're not mindful of our software within our brain and how we're approaching our life and how we're approaching our health, things will happen like autoimmune disease and chronic illness. And I remember when I first started my healing journey, and it was like this come to Jesus moment, truly. It was
Really.
like my first tangible experience with God where I literally prayed. I was like, God, if you're out there, I can't do this anymore. Speaking of identity, my illness became who I saw in the mirror. The reason why we're talking about this, right, Flo, is like it actually starts from this stillness, this gentleness, and it can be utilized to grow our faith and our relationship with God, which is like the coolest thing ever.
Yeah. So if I want to flip it on back on you, and I have a question for you. So
Yeah.
when you're talking about, I love that the dichotomy of that like nurturing perspective
Hmm.
versus this like masculine push through approach. Are there any
Yeah.
particular are there any like points that you like to outline for your clients of like these are kind of the basics of living with it through a nurturing lens of like what that can look like in your day to day?
Yeah. So are we talking about like specific symptoms? I want a little bit more clarity so I can
Not
answer this.
symptoms,
And
but actions. Like if that tenderness like of a mother to a toddler, are there specific things that you're like, hey, like this is something you should be doing every day or every week or every month, or a perspective that when you see this sign, this is how you ought to respond that you think is like particularly necessary for women in their autoimmunity journey?
yeah, oh my gosh, that's such a good question. Oftentimes, right, I start around mealtime. One of the reasons why is because one, I feel like at least it stemmed from my personal experience. I had a horrible relationship with my food and body. My relationship with food needed to be addressed. Little did I realize how effective it was for digestion, which is why I share it with clients all the time today. But it really started from this element of restoring relationship with myself and food. And so when we're trying to establish more of this gentle lifestyle when it comes to our health, a really great action step is breathing before eating. So, oftentimes, when we're talking about stress management tactics, we like to use them in high stress situations. So, it's like, if you're having a fight with your husband, breathe. And you're like, no, it's intense. And so, your brain will naturally be like, no, this is not the time for new stuff. You're more likely to go into bad habits or habits that you're just like super not fond of, right? So, if we flip that on its head, and we say, hey, how about we just breathe before we eat? This one allows you to feel calm and centered when it comes to your meal. So if you're working, for example, having a boundary of being like, hey, I'm going to take my lunch break and I'm going to be present with myself and my food. That's more of like your streamlined gentle. But what it does on like when it comes to your body is that what we know is that our brain has two modes: rest and digest, and fight or flight. And so when we're taking that deep breath before we eat, we're actually giving a physical signal to our brain: we are safe. We are safe to take up space. We are safe to be present. And that actually stimulates digestion. So not only are you approaching your meals with more gentleness, right? You're having boundaries around your work, around your family, around just everyday obligations, right? You're also quite literally reaping more benefits from your food, more nourishment from your food. And so that's something that, like an easy one step, a way to optimize that, especially if you are someone who is a person of faith, like thanking your body and your food while breathing is like
Next level.
next level. And again, so when we're talking about the element of gratitude, right? Harvard came out with a study, I believe late last year, when we're talking about the impact of gratitude, being thankful for your body, being thankful for the food that you're eating. When we're in this headspace, we're in a more nurturing, calming, safe mindset. Not only does this create more neurons that reinforce this belief system, it's like if you're looking for spiders, you see more spiders kind of thing, right? We're quite literally setting ourselves up for success, not only in a mental or emotional state, but a physical state as well. And this can change how we walk through our day, period. And it starts with little seeds. It starts with little moments and then they grow so that eventually, I now see this time and time again with clients, is that when you start with breathing before eating, you eventually get to the point where when you're having those really intense off days, you're like, wait, I know that this works for me. And so then you breathe. And now you feel more in control of your stress, more in control of your symptoms. And not to like change the subject a little bit, but I feel like this is important to mention. is that when we're talking about the stress element of autoimmune disease, when we're talking about the stress element of chronic symptoms, a
Yeah.
lot of that comes from not knowing what to do next. So if we get hit with a symptom, or if we're like, oh my gosh, we're about to go into a flare, I call it the emotional tornado. And we have an emotional response to it. And oftentimes we're like, oh my gosh, what do we do next? What do we do next? And we're spiraling, and there's no single step forward. And so, what I found in my personal healing journey, and now with clients with a variety of degrees of chronic illness and autoimmune disease, is that if we even have one step, this could be breathing, this could be taking a shower, this could be sitting in your room with no lights on and putting on a worship song, right? It helps you feel like you're taking action in some way. Will it prevent that flare up? No. Could it impact the next one? Absolutely.
Yeah. So good. It really is like you cannot like hack your way out of the way that you live your life on the day to day. Like you
Yeah.
really cannot, you cannot speed past the way that you sit down at mealtime 3 times a day.
One more question before we wrap up today. What would you say to the women listening to this podcast who feel too far gone? They're too tired, too inflamed, too late in the game. Maybe they're, in their, 40s, 50s, 60s. What would you tell them to just give them hope that better health is possible for them?
Yeah. If it's okay, I'm going to speak to the believer in Jesus first. And if you do not feel that way, I love you so much. And I hope you can still take like a nugget from it. But like ultimately, the Lord knows exactly where you are right now. And He hasn't abandoned you in it. And He hasn't forgotten you. And you are not like an orphan trying to figure this out on your own. And I know that when you're at that level of desperation, it can feel like there is no hope. And I want you to know that like you were made good. Like your body is good. Even if the way that it is operating right now involves pain, if it involves a lot of exhaustion, if this has been a heavy cross for you to carry with your healing, I just want you to know that like there might be more still waiting for you. Like maybe the story isn't over. And maybe it doesn't have to end this way. And maybe there's like something that you haven't tried yet. And when you're like, I've tried it all, like, don't say that to me. There's always another way. Like there is always like literally, I feel like I look at the cross. I have one behind me right now. And there's like freaking God is hanging on a cross. And I can't imagine. I like the apostles and his mother were probably looking at him being like, how do we get out of this? Well, now he's dead. Like when he's like put in the tomb and it's like it's over now. So like what do we do now? Like there's no way that you get out of this when someone's already dead. And that's the thing with the Lord is that there's always another way. There's always another way. And so if you're like, I've tried every single doctor, amazing. Have you like tried with your food? Yes, I tried with nutritionists, amazing. Have you like, where is your relationship with God out right now? Like, have you like taken some time to take care of your soul lately? Yes, like I pray every day and I go to the doctor and I eat right. Amazing. Okay. Have we worked on the nervous system? And it's not always for there to be like something. I don't want you to hear this as like, you got to keep working, got to keep trying random things because it should not be random. If you are working with the right person, it should be very strategic and like we should be moving along and we have metrics to take care of you in. But I just want you to have like hope that things can be different. And for whatever reason, like this had to be a part of your story. And that's where I think it starts to become like you're not a victim to your own life, but this is like something about this needed to happen for you to become the kind of woman that you need to be. And for you to like be the kind of woman that like heals others through like her own wounds. That's so critical too, to know that like your suffering is never in vain. And there might be someone that like really needs to see you go through this, or that is going to like Gigi, I think about you, like the amount of pain that you were in and the things that you were told that it was like, it's hopeless for like so much of your life, that immense pain, the Lord was like, yeah, no, like I'm going to let you go through it. As much as I would love to just like take it away right now, I need you to go through this because that's actually what's going to give you the capacity to be able to like help others.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's so good. That's so, so good. Thank you so much for sharing that. Anything else coming to mind, or is that?
I just want, if you identify as a high achiever, one, I would pray about that. like if that's helping you, if it's like a helpful, it's something I like tried to call it out and use it a little bit last year, but I'm just like not comfortable with it because I feel like it's the exact thing that I actually need to work against. And so it's not something that I want written on my heart as my identity. So
Yeah.
I would like pray about that. And then the second thing, if you're like, no, 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 I know rest, but like, what else can I do? Like, what supplement I gotta need? And so often we're like, but what about the testing? What about like, I need my protocol to be something that's super advanced. And it's like, we can give you the most advanced protocol in the world, but if you are like running like a chicken with your head cut off, it's just not going to hit. So it's just like you can't skip it no matter what stage you're in. If it sounds like too simple or it sounds like too like fluffy, um, I encourage you to like sit with that. Why is it that uncomfortable and why does it feel that unnecessary to be human? If it's not slow, it's not human. Like ultimately, it takes 9 months to make a person. Our lives are like 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 years long if we're lucky. Like so many things prove that for it to be human, it's got to be slow. And especially someone who wants to move fast, pray with it. If it's not slow, it's not human.
So beautiful. Thank you for just being on this podcast. Thank you for sharing your heart. If anyone wants to find you, can you share where they can find you on social media and all the good things?
Yes, on Instagram at the Catholic Nutritionist. Our website is thecatholicnutritionist.com. And then I also have a podcast, the Made Good Pod, on Spotify and Apple. If you just type in Made Good, you'll see me there with my matcha.
I hope that this podcast was helpful for you. Make sure that if you haven't already, since this is a new podcast when it comes to YouTube, make sure if you haven't already to subscribe to this channel. We release podcasts every Tuesday. And if you know someone who has a connective tissue condition like scleroderma, lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, and more, feel free to share this episode with them. The truth is that hope is not very common when it comes to these types of diagnoses. And you never know how profound and powerful this message could be to someone who deeply, deeply needs it. I'll see you next time. Bye.